Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's September 9th. I thought I'd start today's show off with a quote by Beverley Nichols from his book, Sunlight on the Lawn. Why do insurance companies, when they want to describe an act of God, invariably pick on something which sounds more like an act of the devil? One would think God was exclusively concerned in making hurricanes, smallpox, thunderbolts, and dry rot. They seem to forget that he also manufactures rainbows, apple blossom, and Siamese kittens. However, that is perhaps a diversion. This quote by Nichols came to mind when I heard the wondrous story about the little tomato plant that had sprouted on a piling by the Brooklyn Bridge. It made the nightly news last week after the story was first published by the New York Times, along with a photo taken by a passerby named Matthew Frey, paddleboarding between Pier 1 and 2 in Brooklyn Bridge Park. Frey saw the leaves first, his incredible image of a lone tomato plant growing straight up with no supports and with one perfectly little red tomato was heartwarming. It reminded me of the Charlie Brown Christmas tree, but instead of one little red ornament, there's this little red tomato hanging proudly in the middle of the plant. Frey, who is 54, told the Times, "I'm used to seeing things grow here, but nothing as special as that. Things like that just make me happy." Beverley Nichols would have loved seeing the little tomato plant that could. To him, it would have been heaven sent, a little gift to us all from above. Here's today's brevities. On this day in 1513, James IV of Scotland, along with other flowers of the forest, were killed in the Battle of Flodden. The Scottish army, led by King James, was taking advantage of Henry VIII's absence in France, but they were resoundingly crushed by an army that was organized by Henry's first wife, Katherine of Aragon. It was the largest battle ever fought between England and Scotland, and it was a devastating defeat for the Scots, who remembered the pain of an estimated 12,000 dead sons of Scotland in an old Scottish folk song called The Flowers of the Forest. There are many variations to these lyrics, and they've surfaced over the years. One of the oldest verses ends this way: "The flowers of the forest that fought at the foremost, the prime of the land, are cold in the clay." Today is the anniversary of the death of the botanist and the incomparable botanical illustrator Georg Dionysius Ehret, who died on this day in 1770. Ehret was born in Heidelberg, Germany, to Ferdinand Christian Ehret, who was also a gardener and had a talent for drawing. He taught his son both skills, gardening and drawing, before he died. Ehret made his way to Regensburg as a young man. There he met an apothecary who hired him to draw specimens from his herbarium and garden. Ehret earnestly took on the job, drawing over 500 pieces of art in 1 year. Taking advantage of his young employee, the apothecary fired Ehret and told him he should have completed 1,000 drawings in the first year. It was basically his way of avoiding paying Ehret. After this dreadful experience, Ehret made his way to England and worked at the major botanical gardens there, including the Chelsea Physic. Isaac Rand, the first director of the Chelsea Physic Garden in London, told Ehret to paint the rare plants in the garden. The uniqueness of the specimens added to the demand for Ehret's work. As a result, Ehret was on friendly terms with the plant collectors and naturalists of his time. Chelsea was formative professionally and personally for Ehret. He married the head gardener's sister-in-law, Susanna Kennet. In the Art of Botanical Illustration, Wilfrid Blunt noted that by the middle of the century, Ehret had become a popular figure in London society. The highest nobility in England clamored to receive instruction from him. Indeed, the wealthiest woman in England, the Duchess of Portland, gladly retained Ehret as a drawing instructor. She was struck by the luminescence of his work, and later she would buy over 300 of his paintings. In 1737, Ehret was hired by Sir Charles Wagner, First Lord of the Admiralty. In August of that year, Wagner's personal garden is where Ehret first observed the Magnolia grandiflora flowering. The bloom was so inspiring that Ehret walked for an hour each way from Chelsea to Wagner's house to see and sketch every stage of the Magnolia grandiflora, from bud to full flower. Ehret's work provided the world with the first magnolia to be illustrated in England. Beyond his work in England, Ehret traveled throughout Europe in pursuit of his craft. He met Linnaeus in Holland when he was visiting the Botanical Garden in Leiden. Linnaeus taught Ehret exactly how he wanted plants to be dissected and drawn. By this time, Ehret felt that his drawings were already aligned with Linnaeus, but the calibration didn't hurt. Ehret's work made it possible for Linnaeus to show the differences between plants for his books. When Linnaeus released his catalog of rare plants, called Hortus Cliffordianus in 1737, it featured 20 meticulous plates made by Ehret. As a result of partnering with Linnaeus, Ehret understood plant structure on a level that rivaled most botanists. Ehret's style of drawing is referred to as the Linnaean style. Ehret's father could have never predicted the impact of teaching his son both gardening and drawing, but the two skills had come together in Ehret in a very special way. One expert wrote that Ehret was the greatest artist-illustrator that Linnaeus had. Today, Ehret's work is difficult to source. Given the rarity of an Ehret drawing, they're expensive to acquire. Pieces generally start around $1,000, if you can find one. Just this year, the New York Botanic Garden organized an exhibit called Georg Ehret, the greatest botanical artist of the 1700s. They featured 48 Ehret watercolors and engravings. And today is the birthday of James Arnold, who was born on this day in 1781 and who was the namesake for Harvard's Arnold Arboretum. The Arnold Arboretum was the very first arboretum in the United States. Arnold was born to a Quaker family in Providence, Rhode Island. In 1807, Arnold married Sarah Roch. Had Arnold not married Sarah, there would have probably never been an Arnold Arboretum. Sarah's father was part of a wealthy whaling family. Through his marriage to Sarah, Arnold eventually became a partner in his father-in-law's lucrative business. Arnold used his wealth to buy an 11-acre estate. There he built a mansion and installed beautiful gardens and lawns. The property was so stunning that the Arnolds opened their gardens to the public on Sundays. It was a rare opportunity. The Unitarian minister William Potter called the Arnold estate a home the most conspicuous among all our homes for culture, for hospitality, for charity. John Quincy Adams was a guest of the Arnolds in 1835 and again in 1843. When Arnold died in 1868, he had outlived both his wife and daughter. As part of his will, he left $100,000 in the hands of 3 trustees, Francis Parker, John James Dixwell, and George Emerson. Emerson and Dixwell were essential to the founding of the Arboretum because they personally knew Asa Gray at Harvard, and they also knew that Harvard wanted a botanic garden. When the arrangements for the Arboretum were finally settled, the instructions were to collect every kind of tree and shrub that would grow outdoors in Massachusetts. In 1873, Charles Sprague Sargent was hired to be the Arnold Arboretum director, a position he would hold for over 4 decades. His vision, combined with the stability provided by his long leadership, established a solid foundation for the Arnold Arboretum. With the gift from James Arnold, the Arboretum had the means, and with the leadership of Sargent, it had the expertise. Both were needed to create the world-class Arboretum we enjoy today. In Unearthed Words, this week I'm going to do a special tribute to the author Beverley Nichols, who was born on this day in 1898. Nichols is remembered for his writing and for his love of gardening and cats. Nichols wrote over 60 books, but he's best remembered for his gardening books. In 1932, Nichols wrote Down the Garden Path, and it became an instant bestseller on both sides of the Atlantic. In the book, Nichols wrote about his 1928 purchase of a weekend home getaway, a thatched cottage in the village of Glatton. Nichols knew nothing about gardening when he bought the cottage, so he shared every discovery and disaster in his books. Based on the positive response to his book, Nichols wrote 2 more books on his Glatton experiences. The second book was written in 1933 and is called A Thatched Roof. And the third was written the following year and is called A Village in a Valley. The books are referred to as the Glatton Trilogy or the Always Chronicles. Here are a few excerpts from the first book, Down the Garden Path. A cyclamen looks like a flight of butterflies, frozen for a single exquisite moment in the white heart of time. It was not until I experimented with seeds plucked straight from a growing plant that I had my first success, the first thrill of creation, the first taste of blood. This surely must be akin to the pride of paternity. Indeed, many soured bachelors would wager that it must be almost as wonderful to see the first tiny crinkled leaves of one's first plant as to see the tiny crinkled face of one's first child. And finally, I had never taken a cutting before. Do you not realize that the whole thing is miraculous? It is exactly as though you were to cut off your wife's leg, stick it in the lawn, and be greeted on the following day by an entirely new woman sprung from the leg, advancing across the lawn to meet you. Today's book recommendation is The Proven Winner's Garden Book by Ruth Rogers Clausen and Thomas Christopher. This book is the ultimate gardening guide for all reader levels. It is super easy to read with excellent, clear instructions. Proven Winners is known as the #1 plant brand, and just like their quality plants, this book does not disappoint. In this book, you get 3 awesome things. First, garden plans. But not just any garden plan, simple garden plans. Plans for attracting pollinators, plans for creating the most fragrant garden, plans for an entertaining garden, and so on. Second, Clausen and Christopher have put together dozens of recipes for beautiful containers. Just like a cookbook, these recipes are proven, and they're geared toward providing curb appeal, color, texture, and pizzazz to everything from small spaces to the average home lot. Finally, this guide offers really helpful lessons on how to buy the best plants and also on maintenance, the aspect of gardening so many struggle with. If you're a new gardener, this book will be your Bible for getting started in the right way, maximizing your effort, avoiding hours of research on plants and design, helping you achieve stunning results in a single season. Here's today's garden chore. Start saving seeds and make cuttings of the plants you want for next year. Focus on your top performers and on the sentimental favorites in your garden. This will help you cultivate even better stock next year. And it's important to stay active in your garden now. Don't leave the best of this year's garden to history. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. On this day in 1903, the Akron Beacon Journal out of Akron, Ohio, announced Carnation Day. Here's what it said. The anniversary of President McKinley's death will be noted by the wearing of his favorite flower by Akron citizens. Next Monday will be the 2nd anniversary of the death of President McKinley, and it's been called Red Carnation Day in honor of his favorite flower. President McKinley was shot by Leon Chugach in the Temple of Music at the Buffalo Exposition, September 6, 1901. The shooting occurred late in the afternoon, and inside of an hour, every man, woman, and child within reach of the telegraph instrument heard the sorrowful news and were sending up prayers for the recovery of the president. After the shooting, President McKinley was taken to the home of John G. Milburn, president of the Exposition Company, where he lingered while hopeful and then depressing bulletins were issued from his bedside until finally, on September 14th, he passed from life. Last year, the president's favorite flower was worn by hundreds in this city, and it is expected that next Monday we'll see nearly everyone wearing the flower, the red carnation that usually adorned the lapel of the 3rd martyr president. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.